Well, the big story today, the U.S. and Iran have agreed to a peace deal which will end the military operations on all fronts, including Lebanon.
Now, the initial announcement from mediator Pakistan was quickly confirmed by Washington and Tehran, and an official signing ceremony has been scheduled now for the 19th of June in Switzerland. In a post on his Truth Social network, the U.S. president said that the Strait of Hormuz would reopen, U.S. naval blockade would be removed after the planned signing of the deal on Friday, apparently contradicting an earlier statement that the crucial waterway would open immediately.
Now, Trump added that the deal will bring peace and security to the whole region. Soon after, Iran said that the newly announced agreement with the U.S. puts an immediate end to the country's war.
Now, Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Qasem Gharibabadi, in a televised comment, said that negotiations for a final deal will be held during a 60-day period, adding that Tehran would take its own measures in case of breaches from the other side.
This memorandum of understanding was reached despite our complete distrust of our enemies. We have no trust in the enemy. Our trust lies in our military strength, our diplomatic capabilities, and the support and unity of our own people.
The content of the agreement remains unclear. Iran's Mehr news agency reported that the U.S. will release $12 billion in frozen assets to Iran before the start of negotiations. It quoted a 14-point memorandum of understanding between the two nations, which it said stipulated the release of $24 billion in frozen Iranian assets during the 60-day negotiation period that begins after the MOU is signed.
Just hours before the deal was announced, Tehran had vowed to retaliate for an Israeli strike on Hezbollah in Beirut's suburbs, a move that threatened to derail the agreement.
Iran's military claimed it had humiliated the United States and Israel. In a statement issued after the deal was announced, it said that the two countries, which it described as its enemies, had no option but to accept defeat and surrender.
All right, for more on this, we're now being joined live by Colonel David B. DeRoches. He is a professor at the Thayer Marshall Institute and former Deputy Director for Peacekeeping in the Office of the Secretary of Defense. Colonel, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for making time. I just want to get your assessment. The key sticking points. Iran says they want to hold some autonomy over the Strait of Hormuz. Israel says they want to continue fighting Hezbollah in Lebanon. Do you feel the sticking points have been achieved? They've been resolved? What is leading to this signing on the 19th of June?
Well, honestly, I'm a little bit confused. I have Iranian interlocutors that I appear with on other networks, and what they're describing is something that I can't imagine President Trump has signed up to. I think that there's probably still some substantial difference in how things are interpreted. So, for example, if you look at Lebanon, Iran is kind of compelled by their ideology to say, oh yeah, Lebanon's included in this peace treaty, but Israel's not a signatory, the state of Lebanon is not a signatory. So I just don't see how that can function. The other thing that I've heard from some of my Iranian interlocutors is that there will be a gradual opening of the strait, that it takes time for Iran to set up procedures, and of course I don't think that's acceptable to President Trump, and it's really not a truthful statement. I mean, all they have to do is just stop threatening to attack ships that go through the Strait of Hormuz. So I think there's still a little bit of distance here. Part of this is I think both sides want to portray the other side as capitulating. This thing could still fall apart. And I think that we're more likely to get a general statement of agreement rather than an implementable truce with terms that are agreed upon and clear guardrails. I think those will still be fought over.
Of course, as you mentioned, Colonel, that of course there are sticking points that remains to be resolved, and we'll have to wait until Friday to see a fresh memorandum to see what has been resolved. But then even if that signing is done, does it mean that we're actually back to square one? We're back to the nuclear talks, we're back to the talks on enrichment. So according to you, is this actually a win for Trump?
It's not an unalloyed win. I mean, his detractors will say that he wasted a lot of money just to get to where he could have been in 2018. Trump's backers will say that the 2018 deal was fatally flawed, that Iran was probably moving towards the bomb and that this will have more harsh conditions on Iran, but we honestly don't know. I mean, one other sticking point is Iranians have said that they will get 12 billion of their, basically half of their frozen assets immediately. President Trump has said all along that he's not going to give money to Iran just for talks, that there has to be some action there. So there's still a lot that is unclear here, a lot that has to be defined, and I think there's going to be some kind of furious shuttle diplomacy, and you know, there may not be a sign. I think it's, you know, there's a good possibility that there won't be a sign as these issues are drawn out.
So you're saying that there is a chance there won't be a signing on the 19th because things can fall apart just in the matter of these next 4 days as well. But then you have that 60-day period when the Strait of Hormuz is gradually to be opened. That's again differing between the two sides. Those assets are to be gradually released to Iran. Again, that's grey between the two sides. Israel doesn't want to let up on Hezbollah in Lebanon. These next 60 days would be hinged on these next 4 days, which itself seems shaky.
Well, that's perhaps a little bit more negative than I would put it, but yeah.
All right.
I agree with you in general. I mean, look, the United States has said nothing about Israel and Lebanon. They clearly don't want Israel and Lebanon to be fighting right now. But if President Trump is told by the Israelis, look, we've located, you know, the strike in South Lebanon killed a guy named Dakduk, who was a real bad hombre who executed 4 U.S. Army soldiers in Iraq. He's not going to break with Netanyahu over you know, killing a guy like that. And at some point, you know, if Israel perceives a threat to their security, they're going to take action. They don't care what the United States thinks. They'll make it up later. They're not party to this agreement, and you know, Iran will betray them again. You know, when they see that they have one of their interests at stake, like getting $12 billion of frozen assets. So there's that. But you know, I mean, President Trump tweeted out that the strait will be open immediately, and the Iranians say no, it's going to take time. Well, it's not going to take time. You know, if the Iranians want it open, it could be open immediately. The 60 days is supposedly to come to a nuclear agreement, and I think Trump's vision is that as that agreement is implemented, which means uranium being downblended or removed from Iran, then they start to get funds. I think the Iranians are expecting to see money immediately upon signature. So there's a lot to be defined here, and you know, it's almost like we have 2 different narratives that are from 2 different worlds. So I hope for the best, but I honestly don't see it right now.
And also, you mentioned Israel, the involvement of Israel. How do you assess that to be? Because for now, of course, Lebanon is another sticking point Iran has always focused on. At this moment, the war that was waged on Iran was together with Israel. And now, do you think that Israel will not play any role when it comes to a deal with Iran? Or U.S. is going to ensure that Israel, you need to listen to me when I go to a deal with Iran?
Well, I think that Israel has the ability, you know, I mean, relations between the United States and Israel are generally pretty good. So, you know, if President Trump calls up and says, look, this is a critical moment, I need you guys to back off, Israel will probably say fine, but they're not going to do it indefinitely. I mean, Israel is still recovering from the trauma of the October 7th attacks, and they have fantastic intelligence on Hezbollah. If they get a sense that, you know, Hezbollah is massing rockets to fire on northern Israel and make it uninhabitable, they'll take action. And, you know, they're not signatories to this. So they'll probably do their best to give President Trump a political win, but they're not going to compromise their own security for that. And they define their security and they protect their security in a broader and perhaps some less out of proportion manner than the United States does.
Colonel, I wanted to ask you, do you see an irony here that this entire war, ever since Feb 28th, eventually led to Iran having an upper hand in the negotiations compared to where they were before Feb 28th? Because Strait of Hormuz is also in play. They're demanding for Lebanon, and they're also threatening Bab al-Mandeb.
Well, honestly, I've never heard any American source mention Lebanon. So I have a feeling that is something that the Iranians are doing for their domestic audience. But, look, they betrayed Lebanese Hezbollah when they ordered them into action against the Israelis, knowing that they were not ready to fight. They have really done next to nothing to help out Lebanese Hezbollah, as the Israelis have been pushing in areas that they haven't occupied since in almost 20 years. And, they'll betray them again when their interests are greater. I mean, Iran, if you go back 3 years, Iran was saying that Hamas was a critical part of the axis of resistance, which Lebanese Hezbollah is. They haven't mentioned Hamas. So, they've betrayed Hamas. They will betray, again, Lebanese Hezbollah. The bottom line is these Arab elements of the axis of resistance exist to serve Iranian interests. The Iranians do not compromise on their interests just for the sake of their Arab subordinates.
I want to come to that point because you mentioned Arabs. Considering the fact that the deal is done, how do you see any change in the region, in the diplomacy or militarily? Do you see any change after a deal is done?
Well, yeah. I mean, first off, the attitude of many of the Gulf states, there's really two camps. There's people in the Gulf, there's people in the Levant. The attitude of the Gulf states had been that Iran was a troublesome neighbor, but that they had to find a way to deal with it. It was sort of like the attitude of some German politicians towards the Soviet Union in the 70s. This idea that we don't like this necessarily, but we got to learn to live with it, so let's make concessions. But the indiscriminate nature and pre-planned nature of the Iranian attacks on the GCC states, I think, have really, there's a tipping point there. The geography is still there. They still have to work with these guys, but, their civilian infrastructure was attacked, and they had denied U.S. access, basing, and overflight. So they are not viewing Iran. It's going to take regime change in Iran and a generation to go back to something like a normal relationship between the Gulf states and Iran. There'll still be interaction, but it will be extremely guarded. When you look at the Levant, what's really interesting here is for the first time you've had direct negotiations between Israel and the Lebanese government. And what that suggests to me is that Israeli military action has so degraded Lebanese Hezbollah that this state within a state is possibly going to be subsumed by the Lebanese government, and that Lebanon may become a sovereign state again. That is a huge change, but it's going to be one that Israel has a hard time dealing with, and even the United States, because we want the Lebanese state to be fully sovereign. We want to get rid of Lebanese Hezbollah that operates lawlessly, and
I hear your point.
But at the same time, we don't want to see Israel attacked or an Israeli incursion opposed by the Lebanese forces. So we have some thinking to do there.
I hear you. Colonel, let me quickly get one more reaction from you. You visit the Gulf region very frequently. You understand the region very well. You've served there. Do you find or do you foresee U.S. downsizing its West Asia imprint post this war?
No. And by the way, that's another Iranian demand, is that the United States removes from the region. But look, we're there. We didn't have a significant presence there before the Iranian Revolution. And honestly, we didn't have a significant presence before Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. We're there in a reactionary base, and it's at the request there basically to preserve the sovereignty of some very small countries against a rapacious adversary or potential adversary that views the natural order of these states as being subordinate to them. So that relationship will be there. It's a lot smaller. The numbers are smaller than people think, but they're still substantial. And I think our presence, we're not going to negotiate that away. We're there for the long run.
All right. Colonel, thanks so much for joining us here on World DNA. Always a pleasure speaking with you. These next 4 days are going to be very critical, as you pointed out as well. We'll need to wait and watch. There'll be more to discuss. Look forward to having you here with us again.
It's an honor. Thanks for having me.